How's everybody doing? All right. They gave me a list of interesting questions to ask. So we'll start at the end.
Oh, boy.
All right, you go first, Brittany.
Assuming I throw myself?
Okay, this one I picked out specifically for you.
Oh, great. Okay.
What initially drew you to the true crime genre, and how did you get started creating true crime podcasts?
So, true crime. I remember growing up in, like many of us, my mom watching whatever major trial was happening that was televised at the time. I'm from South Florida, so there were some iconic ones that were happening for quite a while there. At 8 years old, my version of television was Law & Order SVU. And then I actually went totally bizarre direction. I went to college for dance, so I went full musical theater, Broadway world. And after a while, wanted more. Wanted to be able to tell stories that I felt like could make a real difference, and went to what I knew best, which was what I was consuming. And fell into podcasting, as I like to say, as many of us, ass backwards. And if I was going to do it with anyone, I wanted to do it with audiochuck. So I went from glitz and glam stage to like much more boots on the ground, gritty true crime.
Very cool. Very cool. What about you?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned your mom watching the trials at the time. My mom was like a Dateline, 48 Hours, but I would wake up to get a glass of water as a kid and like run as fast as I could through the living room because I didn't want to see anything on the screen. It freaked me out. My way into true crime was actually from my education. I went to school for journalism, investigative journalism, and then I graduated and I didn't touch my degree. I went more so into marketing, had a career in radio. I went on tour with One Direction, and then I came back, and I was living in New York City, also doing radio, but began producing a show, a podcast, a business show. And during that time, spending a lot of time on the subway in the city, I was listening to the popular podcast at the time, of course, Crime Junkie, top of the charts, was getting into Serial. And, you know, I kept saying to myself, why doesn't anyone do a true crime show that's focused entirely on New England? I'm from Maine. I'm very proud of my home state, my home region. And I would tell anyone who would listen, someone should start a show just covering New England cases. And everyone was looking at me like, yeah, you should do it. And, you know, it took the pandemic sending me home from New York City unexpectedly back to my home state, and wanting to revisit that hard-earned education, that expensive degree hanging on the wall, when I finally said, oh yeah, I should be the one to start a New England true crime podcast. So I leveraged that investigative journalism background, my experience in podcasting, having produced a show for about 5 years, and I launched in late 2020 and haven't looked back. I was an independent creator for so long, and then joined audiochuck at the start of this year, and, you know, same as Brittany, there's no network I wanted to join other than audiochuck. You know, when I started from the beginning, I had this tiny little whisper of a dream. Wouldn't it be cool if someday Ashley Flowers heard my show? And now Ashley Flowers is a colleague and a mentor and a friend. So it's been a very fun ride. A lot of work has gone behind it, but I think, yeah, that was my path to true crime.
Very cool. Thank you, Kylie. We have another New England guy on the corner here. So, Johnny, I guess the same question for you.
Yeah. Hello, I'm John, the New England guy. I'm better known as MrBallen online, and I host the MrBallen Podcast as well as the MrBallen Medical Mysteries Podcast, and I have a YouTube channel as well. And you know, honestly, to get to podcasting, I don't even know how I got here, because I started in the military, and I got out of the military in 2017, and I was struggling to find a job, and in an effort to get a civilian job, I wound up putting together this like networking event, I guess, if you will. It's like a charity that basically brought together veterans and employers to help them get jobs. And so I kind of inadvertently created a job helping other veterans get jobs. But critically, it was a nonprofit, and so we needed to raise money for it. And we began using storytelling on LinkedIn primarily to talk about, you know, different veterans and their skill sets and how they apply to the civilian world. And we were really good at telling these stories online, and I began to see the power of the internet. You know, I saw it. You know, it's like if you can tell an effective story online, you can capture an audience, and you can actually move people around pretty effectively. So it was just kind of in my mind that I was very impressed with the concept of social media and the internet. And so I was primarily making content around trying to raise money for this charity, so like military content. But at some point, I began experimenting with, you know, personal branded content, like stuff that would just be for myself. And so much of it was like so cringy and terrible and didn't go anywhere on any platform. I was like churning out these videos that were just so bad. I had I pretended to be like a kid in elementary school that was like struggling on his math tests, and it like wasn't funny at all, but I had like a whole series behind it that like didn't get any traction. But eventually, in early 2020, I was at a water park in Pennsylvania, an indoor water park, with my wife and kids, and I had been thinking about trying this new type of content, this strange, dark, and mysterious storytelling type, because I personally really liked strange, dark, and mysterious content. I liked dark stories, like true crime stuff. And I told this, I made a quick TikTok in early 2020 about these missing hikers in Russia in the 1950s. It's the Dyatlov Pass mystery. To recap the story, these 9 hikers in the 1950s, they go into the Ural Mountains in Russia, and these are like incredibly talented hikers. They're not even hikers, they're like mountaineers. And they were going out to do this test to basically prove that they were the top hikers in Russia. It's called your level 3 hiking test, which seems like nothing, but it was a big deal at the time. And they get lost, or they don't get lost, they don't show up to their checkpoints. And so eventually the military is called in to go look for these 9 hikers. And they ultimately find their campsite, and it's on the side of this mountain, this like windswept, you know, no trees, it's just like pure ice mountain. And their tent was cut open from the inside out, and like half their clothes were left inside the tent folded neatly, and then there was all these footsteps leading away from the tent where it was obvious that some people had like one shoe on and some had no shoes on. It's the middle of the winter, it's like, you know, 5 feet of snow. And the military, they follow these tracks around, and they find all the bodies of the hikers. They're all located kind of strewn about the mountain, and they're all deceased. But some of them were radioactive, their skin was radioactive, you know, there's all these bizarre kind of tells on the body, you know, like they were missing pieces of their body. And the night before, the Soviet military was out there doing an exercise, and they had reported seeing all these strange lights in the sky right over the Ural Mountains, and they had never made a report like that before. Like the military, for the first time, is reporting this particular thing, and it lines up exactly with these hikers, you know, mysteriously dying. So I told that story in 60 seconds on TikTok, thinking it was just going to flop like everything else I was doing. But I'm at this water park, I record this video about these hikers. I leave my phone in the room, and I go to the water park, because it's going to get wet if I'm at the park with my phone. A couple hours later, I come back, and my phone was like broken. There were so many notifications on my phone, I couldn't even open it. And then when I finally did, and I looked at that video, thinking it was going to have like 5 views, it had 5 million views. And for reference, I've never, ever, to this point, had any success on social media. It isn't like, I know what I'm doing. It was like, what is this? But candidly, it was like so fun, you know? Like, holy cow, like I did this thing that got all this attention. And my background is I was a Navy SEAL, and so I'm really good at doing like hard stuff for long periods of time. And I like went into this mindset of like, I'm gonna make as many of these kind of videos as I possibly can, and just see what happens. And it turns out there was a whole world that came out of this decision. You know, my TikTok account went from being this one-off story to becoming, you know, a robust page with millions of followers that does storytelling content about strange, dark, and mysterious. I eventually, you know, made it my job and transitioned to YouTube, which is a better monetization platform than TikTok, just because it's long form, it's easier to make money. And then, you know, when I was really seasoned with YouTube and we had millions of followers there, it just seemed like I was basically already podcasting, but on YouTube. I was doing these like 30 to 45-minute stories, much like the Dyatlov Pass. And yeah, Nick here is my manager and also the CEO of our studio, Ballen Studios. And he and I decided that the next logical step would be to get into podcasting, primarily because, for all of you who are here, this is probably why you're here, the opportunity is so big in podcasting right now. It's like stratospheric, and people don't really know it unless you're in the industry. And so when we made the decision to go to podcasting, it was actually done with a huge amount of intent. Everything else was kind of like, we'll see what happens, doing random stuff on TikTok and YouTube. But podcasting was like a strategic move because there's just an enormous amount of money, there's a huge audience to gain, and there's just so much opportunity that people don't even know about yet. It's like the beginning of this massive rush to podcasting where there's still opportunity to basically carve out massive, a footprint within this industry. So we went to podcasting on purpose because of the opportunity, and here we are. So way rambling and long, but that's my answer.
It's also hilarious. You have a former Navy SEAL, a former dancer, and someone who toured with One Direction. So really, moral of the story, it's a very linear path. You have to go down that at all points in time.
Yeah, I guess do everything but podcasting. You'll get into podcasting, right? Very good, very good. I'd say this one's for Kylie. How do you handle the sensitive nature of the content that's on your podcast? Like especially, dealing with like the victims and the stories are pretty brutal. And
Absolutely. The first thing I remind myself before getting into a case is that I am not entitled to that story. I'm not entitled to the story of the surviving family members, to what happened to the victim. And so while my goal ultimately is to work with a family member to tell the story of their loved one, to honor the legacy of the human at the center of each case, that's not always an option when creating a weekly show. So when I tell those stories, I keep in mind that if this ever were to reach a family member who I wasn't able to work with, will they feel honored? Will that legacy be honored? And candidly, as an anxious person and a non-confrontational person, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed and feel good about how I was, transparently creating my livelihood through podcasting, through telling these stories, knowing that it could potentially dredge up some trauma and cause harm. So my first point of attack is knowing that I'm not entitled to this story, and I'm going to do right by it, do right by the family, even if I can't work with them directly.
Awesome. Johnny, I know you've, been through this a lot through the stories you tell, whether strange, dark, mysterious, or true crime. Do you kind of want to go into your vision and how you deal with that stuff?
Yeah, sure. So I've said this a couple times online, but it's not lost on myself or anybody else at Ballen Studios that fundamentally in being in the business of true crime, like literally the name of the discussion here, we are profiting off of other people's tragedies. Like that is what it is. There's no two ways about it. And if you try to tell it like it's something else, you're lying to yourself. But it's not wrong as long as you are honoring the people in that story. And also, I would say from our perspective, going into the business of true crime, we really felt strongly that we wanted to literally give back a portion of the profits we were making on these tragedies to the people in these stories. And so fairly early on, kind of before we even knew if the whole MrBallen thing would really take hold, we set up a charity and really put a lot of energy into building out the MrBallen Foundation. We recruited this incredible executive director, and Lori Gift is her name, who's been doing this for 20 years. I mean, we built a robust foundation right out the gate, and we also committed an enormous amount of money from our studio to ensure all donations going into the charity would go 100% out the door to victims and their families. So there's a big push on our end to like literally give back, but then also just certainly to your point, being very, very cognizant of the fact that these are real people, real tragedies, and you really need to honor the people that are in these stories. And then lastly, this is more of a stylistic point, but I have always found that, at least for the shows that I'm hosting, it's very effective when you're telling a story about true crime, let's say, to put the audience in the perspective of the victim. Only because a lot of times when you're viewing other true crime shows in any medium, a lot of times the emphasis is placed on the killer or the kind of the atrocity that was committed, and of course that needs to be a part of the story to some degree. But it's frankly just purely from a content perspective, it's what we're all so accustomed to. When in reality, if you really want to grip your audience with a true crime story, if you put them in the mind of the victim, it's much more relatable, and frankly, you will appreciate what actually happened to these people, because it's like, wait a minute, this person is just like me. This horrible thing that happened to them could have happened to me, to my neighbor, to my friend. But it also allows you not only to put them in that perspective, but as the narrator, you can really build out the victim, and you can actually honor their life, literally. You can tell people who these people were, what they were doing, what mattered to them, who their family was, who their friends were. I mean, we have families reaching out to us afterwards that say what a difference it made to have the story told the way you told it. You know, Dateline covered it, they covered it, whoever covered it, and it was totally exploitative, but the way you did it was with class. And so that's our guiding star, for sure.
How much has the foundation been donated to? Like, how much has the studio, or how much have you donated to the foundation to date?
Since we launched the MrBallen Foundation about 2 years ago, it's donated, I think, a little over $1 million to victims and their families of true crime.
Damn. Thank you, Johnny. Yeah, it deserves a round of applause. That's good shit. This one goes to kind of the business and to the host, the storyteller. So, what's been the most difficult thing in podcasting that each of you have kind of gone through, or what was like your initial first big hurdle, or what's something that you can look back on that kind of was a real tough moment once you either started or once you were started and you were successful and kind of hit some roadblocks?
I think it comes back to content for us. I think in podcasting, you're always going to figure out technically, you can Google how to make your content, or like your, from a technical perspective, your production experience better, right? Every blog will tell you what best mic, how to treat your walls, how to publish your things. Nobody's going to tell you how to look, you know, a victim's loved one in the eye and talk about why you do what you do. And so I say the privilege of my role is I've had a lot of conversations with different individuals who podcasting is such a new medium, right? And we view it, it's becoming an extension of investigative journalism. We're seeing our content, we've been very fortunate. audiochuck has been a part of identifying 11 Jane and John Does. We have 12 solves right now when it comes to different murders throughout the country. And so being able to tell people like, no, this isn't frivolous. Like, this really is intentional. Here's what we do, without coming off as anything defensive, because to your point, like, the entitlement is something that is really grody in the space, right? Those conversations, no one teaches you to be a good person. So that, I think, has been the biggest challenge of how to approach those sensitive conversations.
So quick follow-up. So you guys have discovered stories that didn't have an ending, and you guys kind of closed the case.
Yeah, and actually recently what's been, I mean, you know, a dream come true in the sense of like, oh my God, this is all worth it. There was a case out in Odessa, Texas, Father Patrick Ryan, years and years and years ago. And the man who was convicted for it was since released, but was on parole. And it was very clear the man didn't do it. Go back and listen to the episode. I won't give you all the good stuff. But we published an episode on his case. The daughter and son-in-law of the Odessa chief of police listened to the episode. They were driving en route to Odessa. They're like, hey, Dad, what the? Like, you got to check out this case. He actually listened to them. It led to them taking a look at the case file again, and they found evidence that had not been tested. The man has since been exonerated. And so we're very fortunate that the Innocence Project of Texas reached out to us. Obviously, they are, you know, doing just the most incredible work out there, and have been humble enough and gracious enough to give us partial credit for being able to be a part of that. And so it's all worth it.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
As far as you were speaking about the challenges in creating this content, I think for me, being an independent creator at the beginning, there was a lot of imposter syndrome that came along with launching a show and claiming the title of investigative journalist. Even though I had that degree, I still couldn't believe it about myself until I was actually in the act and actually investigating these stories and reporting on these stories. But the other part of that challenge, and it really was all mindset-based, I think at the beginning, was launching a show that was regionally focused. I think new creators, new podcasters getting into this space, there's certainly the dazzle of the potential financial upside of starting a show. And if I had launched my show as a side hustle at the time, knowing or defining success only as how much money I could make with it, I would have stopped very early on. The show truly was a passion project. I believed in the mission of honoring the legacy of the humans at the center of each case and working with family members and bringing attention to longstanding unsolved homicides and missing persons cases. And so that was my definition of success. And luckily, there were other people, there were audience members who believed in that definition of success as well, and they believed in the show. And that's why a regional show, while you might think may only bring a regional audience, ended up having a much wider appeal. Because people didn't really care at the end of the day where the stories were being told. They wanted to hear the stories and they wanted to feel good about the content they were listening to. And so seeing that really click for my audience, seeing that growth at the beginning, certainly having the support of a hometown audience coming from local radio, people recognized my voice and they really supported that hometown girl telling hometown stories at the beginning. But then it just spread because word of mouth. People liked the show, they got what I was doing, and they wanted to support it. So the challenges, I think, at the beginning for me being an independent creator was the mindset of it all. And defining a version of success that would keep me motivated even when I didn't have sponsors. My very first sponsor, by the way, was a local woman-owned business. And so I always tell, I work with women who want to, launch podcasts. I'm like, reach out to the people in your community, see what you can do to, fund your show, at least keep the lights on, pay your hosting bill at the start. You don't need big sponsors at the beginning to really keep your show going.
I hope everyone wrote that last point down on their notebook, because that's a good point when it comes to the financing of the show and how you can keep it on. Like, you need people to give you money, whether it's brands or partners or anything like that. So in case anyone missed it, plug your show one more time.
My show?
Yes,
it's
please.
Dark Downeast, New England's true crime podcast.
There you go. Cool. Same one for you, Johnny. What was like the toughest thing that you came across when you started podcasting? Maybe an early hurdle or a late hurdle?
I mean, admittedly, when we first decided to launch the podcast, which was early 22.
Yeah, February of 2020.
So the MrBallen Podcast, our flagship show, we launched that in February of 2022. But the few months leading up to it, that was when we made the decision that we're gonna do this whole podcasting thing, the whole strategic move into podcasting. But we had no idea how to make a podcast. I'm not kidding. We had to Google what is an RSS feed and how do you get one. I still can't even fully explain what an RSS feed is.
Yeah, there's people for that.
But truthfully, the thing with podcasting, and I think this probably extends to any kind of new burgeoning media, is there's so much going on that it's really hard to identify what path you should take if you're just starting. It's like there's a million podcast platforms, which if you are not in the business, it's not clear. Well, wait, do I have to literally post on every single podcast platform? Do I choose a few? It's an overwhelming amount of options that you can take in the industry, and trying to figure out what we should do was really a challenge. And frankly, at the time when we were trying to get into podcasting, we had pretty influential friends in podcasting that we could turn to ask questions about how do you build a podcast? What are the most important things? On YouTube, for example, at scale, when you're doing videos, every single week or whatever, if your cadence is constant, your title of your video and your thumbnail image are critical to the success of that video. Unfortunately, it's not the case that if you just have a really good video, it's going to go really far. It probably won't. It has everything to do with the algorithm. And it should be quality video. You should make a good video. But podcasting, it's we didn't know what are the things you should focus on. And so what we learned is consistency is probably the most important thing when you start a podcast. You have to start by identifying, or you have to start by letting your audience know what your posting schedule is going to be, and then you can't mess it up. As soon as you mess it up, there's just too many podcasts probably in your genre that are posting more frequently and posting better content that you can't afford to miss that. So it's identify how often you're going to post and commit to it. And if you're just getting into podcasting, you need to understand too that you're also beginning something that will make you basically no money to begin with. Unless you have some other really compelling way to make money with podcasting, you got some other big audience elsewhere, fine. But if you're just getting into podcasting, it's a slog up front. It's long form content on repeat, probably every week. And also, by the way, weekly shows are That is the thing that are coveted by advertisers. You want to have a weekly, always-on show. Those seasonal run or the limited series runs, the 6-episode, 8-episode, 10-episode runoffs, they might win crazy awards and be super successful, and everybody might love them. But advertisers don't. They're not going to advertise on that, at least not even close to what you get on a weekly, always-on show. So I'm kind of going off the rails here, but basically, it is an overwhelming landscape to look at if you're just starting. And so trying to distill what to do was quite a challenge. And then literally, I remember the day before we went live, we were like practicing uploading podcasts because we didn't even know how to do it. Like, all right, I'm gonna put it on now. Like, do you see it on Apple? Like, but it's very doable. You just need to like understand that it looks like chaos, but if you actually just pick your posting cadence, stick to the cadence, learn what an RSS feed is, and just stick to it. Like, honestly, with podcasting, volume and consistency actually go a pretty far way. Until they adopt a really aggressive algorithm that kind of goes across every platform, like, you do have the opportunity to just kind of like mass produce content. And if one thing catches, you have this whole back catalog of content that those people are going to want to consume. So last thing is, on social media, TikTok right now is like the one platform where you can totally get organic reach, meaning you can get on there with no following and make it big on TikTok. I'd say it's less so than it was in like 2020 and 2021, but from a podcasting perspective, you should be thinking hard about syncing up with a TikTok account as you grow your podcast, because just posting clips of your podcast, even if it's a static image on TikTok with just your audio playing, there's so much opportunity for organic growth on TikTok, and then also Instagram Reels, where you can just download videos from TikTok, dump on Instagram Reels. You can also spike your podcast growth just by making sure you're posting on those platforms. So make sure you don't miss on the organic growth opportunity on TikTok and Reels, and be really consistent with podcasting. So
I want to touch on the consistency bit, because one of the first things Ashley Flowers said to me when I thought I was getting catfished, when she reached out, or when Kevin reached out, the first thing she said in our meeting was, "You never miss a Monday." My Monday was my release schedule at the time, and I don't know if I hadn't maintained that consistency and kept that promise to my listeners, to my audience, that I was going to release a weekly show every Monday without fail. I don't know if I would have had the opportunity to join the network, because that's what made me stand out. So yeah, definitely doubling up on that consistency point.
That's great advice. Yeah, Johnny, you were going into the art of discoverability, right, with TikTok, and that's a great point, Kylie. And the funny thing, when John brought up, we knew nothing about podcasting. I mean, we knew nothing. So I called up anyone that I knew that knew anything about podcasting, which was pretty much everybody, and asked a million questions, and asked each one of them if they knew someone who knew more about podcasting than them. And then we probably had about 100 calls and figured out how we would do it, and kind of the rest is history. But all right, so here's a question for kind of both of you guys combined, because it's sort of business, sort of host. How do you engage with your audience, and what role does the listener and their interactions play in your podcast?
Yeah, start.
Okay. So obviously this Crime Junkie is our tentpole, if you will. And I think at one point in time, producers of true crime underestimated what the listener and what the viewer was willing to do after the episode ended. And I think where Crime Junkie has succeeded was it's a three-way conversation with the 50 million people that listen a month. And what we've seen, the first role at audiochuck that was ever hired was a fan engagement person to sit and answer every email, every message, send a letter back, anything. And I think that deep connection with your listener, especially in our space, because I think if you're creating true crime content in a vacuum, you're already kind of off. If you're doing it with the intention of saying, hey, I want you to listen and then get up and go do something about it, right? That means you have to feel like I'm someone that's worth getting up and walking and doing something for, right? And so where Britt and Ashley have been so amazing is not only is their friendship true, right? Like, they do have this incredible story. They are so deeply passionate about it. And then the listener, by doing, it's this funnel, right? Like, the more the listener gives, the more we can give back. And so they know, they've seen what can happen when they show up, which is why we have, I think, the little revolution of crime junkies that we do?
Yeah, that. No, the fan engagement team at audiochuck is incredible, and that was one of the many perks that Dark Downeast gets to benefit from, as joining the network. But they're always there commenting, engaging with fans, making sure if someone has a case recommendation, it's landing in the right place. And that was something as an independent creator that, kind of fell by the wayside. I was doing everything from start to finish, and so engaging with fans was something that was really challenging for me. And now having this support of audiochuck to make sure that they're taking action, that they know how to take action, that at the end of every episode there is a call to action, whether it's, if it's a tip line or if it's an opportunity to support a cause that's important to the family or that would help, support the solve of the case. And so the listener is very much a part of the ecosystem of the show. It certainly couldn't exist without somebody listening, but we do expect them to do something about it when they're done listening. It's not just entertainment at the end of it.
Very cool. Very good. All right, what about you, Johnny?
All right, over to me. So I think I'm in a little bit of a unique position with regards to audience engagement, only because I'm one of the I am a podcaster that really started more as a YouTuber and digital content creator first, whereas I think that there are quite a few very significant podcasters and podcast organizations that are just podcast. They don't really have necessarily an equally robust social media and other side following. But so because we went the other direction, starting with social media and YouTube and that kind of thing, and then transitioned to podcasting, we have the benefit of, frankly, the comment section in YouTube. We have comment sections across Instagram. The platforms literally allow you to actually interact with fans, whereas with podcasting, find me a comment section for podcasting. They don't really exist. I mean, maybe you could say Reddit kind of turns into the comment section, but Reddit also turns into like hell, being in Reddit. But as a result, the way in which the MrBallen brand really grew is, early on when I first kind of went viral on TikTok and then was posting on YouTube, against my better judgment and against lots of recommendations, I was reading comments and reading, what people were saying, and obviously fixating on only the negative stuff. But
That's why you need a good manager.
So yeah, I
don't
screwed
listen
me up
to the
for
comments.
a while. But I found that looking through the comments, you can actually find a lot of pretty meaningful feedback that actually is useful. People that do mean well. They might be criticizing you, but they do have things that are pretty valuable to say. And I kind of inadvertently conditioned myself to seek out those types of comments, but look at them genuinely as a positive thing, because these are people that are actually trying to make what you do more successful because it's good for them. And so I am a compulsive comment reader and comment responder, across the internet. We actually, letting the cat out of the bag a little bit here, but we have a fan engagement team, if you will. So I'm personally interacting with fans all the time, and we also have other people that pretend to be me that interact with fans, but don't tell anybody. But there's an enormous amount of just back and forth because we had that social side built up, the digital side. And so when we went into podcasting, we very quickly learned it's very hard to get that real-time feedback from fans. And so we have relied disproportionately on our social media and YouTube to basically interact with our fans who are on the podcast. But I would say that just goes to show how, frankly, young podcasting is, that has not been solved yet on the platform level. There should be a comment section for podcasting. There should be some level of engagement with the fans, but it doesn't exist yet. That's a good sign. It means that it's still really early, and it's a great time to get into podcasting in a really serious way. So we are very intentional on the social media and on the kind of digital side to stay engaged with our audience.
Very good, everyone. I was told I need to answer one question, so I'll read this one, and I think this would be
You
good.
want me to read it to you?
Yeah,
Which one is it?
Hit me with the first one up top.
All right, here we go. Okay. Looking ahead, what do you see as the future of true crime podcasting, and how do you plan to evolve your content to meet changing audience demands and trends? And then I'm going to combine this with, what about the future of podcasting overall and your involvement in it? All right, you got 60 seconds.
Yeah, this one's a good one. I mean, I'm going to speed through this one. So it's interesting because like what Johnny's saying, what Kylie and Brittany are saying is, it's a saturated market. There's always new shows coming up. If you look at the charts on Spotify, Apple, they're always changing. The top 10 is rarely the same. Maybe there's 5 that stay on the top 10, 5 that stay on the top 20. The rest just pop up and down. You need to be innovative. I know what audiochuck has done. I won't speak for them, but like building a network of other shows that are within their umbrella. So for us, it's strange, dark, mysterious. So it's everything from true crime to unexplained deaths to paranormal to UFO, etc. And we started signing creators in YouTube that want to get into podcasting and building a funnel for them. And then just always kind of paying attention to what's going on. So, your content should be evolving, but you should stay true to what you're doing as a creator. Like I know John, in the very beginning when we started the show, everyone had their 2 cents. It should be like this. It should be like that. It should be host co-host. It should be... And I just go, Johnny, just make sure you do it how you want to do it, and it's going to be just fine. And, so stay true to yourself and to your brand, but also don't be afraid to innovate, right? There's the whole like, oh yeah, it's got to be 35 to 40 minutes. It's got to da-da-da. Now it's, Spotify's focusing on simulcast, which is video and audio, right? So all these things are kind of changing, and you got to stay, ahead of the curve on that. But I think, realistically, if you have a flagship show, like what you guys have and we have, being able to use that and grow it into other shows, whether it's John doing it or we're incubating other creators and other hosts to create their own shows, you always have to just be paying attention. And, what you did maybe a year or two ago might not be the thing you should be doing next year. So. And
also, I just want to add one kind of level. This is like a tactical piece of information that I think is true. It might not be, but I think it is. So we are at a very high level in podcasting. We're one of the premier shows in true crime, so you could make the case that we are at the top of the industry. And I will tell you that from my purview, the most important thing about a show, especially a new show, is where it stands in the rankings. I don't care what people say about it, that is like a big piece of clout and it matters. And so if you're thinking about goals for a show, getting onto any ranking, like it doesn't even matter what ranking it is. If you just land on some chart, like a top 200 somewhere, that is actual currency in the podcasting world to showcase the strength of your show. And it doesn't really matter if your show drops from that position. It needs to hit it at some point, and you hold on to that number. And you can use that when you're talking to people about your show. I do that right now with our shows. That does matter currently at what I would say is like the top. That's what people care about. There's loads of other factors as well, but in terms of setting goals for a show, it's not petty and it's not meaningless to be in a ranking somewhere. So in terms of going ahead, that's a great goal, to get on a chart somewhere because it holds currency. How many shows does the network have on like the Amazon top 50? Now we're just 100% flexing.
It's a good question for everybody.
Well, we have a few, but nothing compared to audiochuck. You guys have like 75 shows.
They're the
top
pros.
10. Yeah, so.
All right, Brittany and Kylie.
Yeah, what's so interesting about this question to me is over the past like 5 years, if you would have said what you would have done a year ago, you're not doing that now. And I think that we constantly, it's the joy and the pitfall of being in an industry that is so young. What we are trying to do is be adaptable, but also not compromise. And I think out of desperation, you'll see a lot of content compromise what they do to fit what advertisers are asking them to do. And it's a lot of work to figure out how to make it work for your content, right? You'll get shiny new toy syndrome, right? Like, so someone will come to you and be like, oh my God, we're doing this cool new thing. You have to be the first ones to do it. And we're like, oh, tell us more. And you start to like really get to the nitty gritty and you're like, I think this could be a great thing or not so great. And I'm not willing to be the one to find out because it's so much bigger than that, right? Especially when you've dedicated how many years to developing your product. Stick with what you know to be true. The rest will follow. And I think that as new content is coming out, as you're reading the trade publications, as you're seeing that, keep your ear to the ground. You want to know where people are succeeding and where they're failing. And you don't want it to entirely dictate every decision you're making, but you do want it to inform. And so I do struggle with the future question because I think we'll be sitting here a year from now being like, whatever I said last year, throw it out the window. Like, iOS 17, big conversation right now within the space of how that's affecting downloads.
Yep.
We wouldn't have ever thought that would be part of our conversation necessarily a year ago. So it's sticking true to what you do, staying informed, and not compromising, my opinion.
Very good.
I love it when she talks.
She's incredible.
She's
Bring
really
it.
good at talking. I think in speaking to the future of true crime specifically, I think the industry is on the verge of a empathy reckoning, or we're standing in it right now, and it's driven by the surviving family members realizing that they do deserve a voice in this, and it's been the ones with the courage to stand up and and take that voice for themselves and make their voice heard. A friend of the network, certainly, Sarah Turney, I love what she's doing with media pressure, with Julie Murray telling Maura Murray's story. That's a case from New England that my listeners have asked me to cover, and quite frankly, it scared me because there were so many voices on that story. What could I add? And Julie's voice is the one that should have been adding to that story. So it's really cool to see that this industry is evolving and being, sitting on this stage, a bunch of creators who have that victim focus, who are also advocacy driven, who are raising money and contributing money to the causes that are most important to the families at the center of all of this. I think that's where the industry has started to go, true crime specifically, and it will continue to go that way. And there's no fighting it. There's no room for the entitlement anymore in this space. It's going to be the voices of the victims that get louder and louder.
Very good, very good. One cool question. Do we want to open up for general Q&A? We have 8 minutes left.
Sure.
Let's do it. Okay, cool. Round of applause for you guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. You too.
Well done, Nick. Good job.
All right, any questions? Raise those hands high. We got one in the back on the left. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Good
I'm
question.
having a blast. Yeah. I say
The
even on the
million-dollar
hard
question.
days, it's so worth it. Podcasting is freaking hard. And the barrier to entry is so low that you kind of go into it like, like thinking it's going to be one thing. And then you start to do it and you're like, well, if no one's listening to it, is this any fun? Like, it starts to become this, like, screaming into a void. It is the hard days are really stinking hard, as is every job, probably in the world. I feel like the luckiest chick on the planet to get to do what I do every day.
Yeah, ditto. I'm still having fun. It's a very special brand of fun when your passion and a purpose combines into something that contributes to your personal growth, that's helping people at the same time. It's a really special cocktail. And, to launch with audiochuck January 4th, to see my show sitting at the top of the charts when I literally started this in my closet in Maine during the pandemic. I still record in my closet, but that's what it did. That's all it takes. You can sit at the top of the charts. So I'm absolutely having fun, while also knowing that this is a very heavy responsibility to carry telling these stories.
Monday through, honestly, most 7 days a week usually, but Monday through Friday, I go into my studio at 8:30 in the morning, and every day I think the same thing. Today is going to be the day that I have a flawless, easy recording. But then I start the recording, and the first 20 minutes are literally without fail for 3 years, just me screwing up a line and swearing repeatedly as loud as I can until finally I have to leave the room and calm myself down. And then my warm-up's done, and I go back in, and sometimes I'm able to do a recording at that point, okay? So jokes aside, it's like every day is it's so different day to day, like how it's going to go. But consistently, it's just going to be harder than you think it is. Trying to create long-form content on a weekly cadence. We have several shows we create every single week. Like, the words, we got to get ahead, are like the worst things I hear, all day long. It's like, I know we need
What's
to
your
get ahead.
backlog?
I know we need to get ahead.
You got the can.
No, but it's an incredible opportunity to be able to be pioneering, at least to some degree, in this industry. And as challenging as it is, every day I feel very thankful to be doing this. And then also just to my background being in the military, which was like a lot of hard work. It makes this feel so relaxed to just hang out in my studio and like tell stories. So
getting shot at.
yeah, so it's good. It's a grind, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, what creators have to go through and the pressure of just having to put up a weekly show is just insane. Like as a manager with clients and obviously managing him, and I'm sure with you guys and your creators that you guys have under your shows, I mean, the pressure is immense, right? Especially when it starts to be successful and think, man, if I get sick, if I get into a car wreck, if I get COVID, if my fucking power's out, like there's a million things that can go wrong on a weekly show. But yeah, I would say it's definitely a good time. Great question.
Time for one more.
Yeah, who else? Got one more in the back left again. Back left is hitting hard.
How much time do you have?
I'll start. So I sat down with Judy Richardson, who is the mother of Darian Richardson. I can't tell the story without Darian was spending the night at her boyfriend's house when she was shot in her bed during a home invasion. She was not the intended target. She survived, but about 6 weeks later, complications with a bullet still lodged in her hip ultimately ended her life. And Judy, this case is still unsolved. Judy and her husband have been very vocal about getting more attention on the case and trying to change some background check laws in Maine for firearms. And so they're very vocal people, but they never felt like their story was told end to end. And I got to sit down across the table to Judy in a house where Darian's picture is still on all the walls. And she was showing me artwork that Darian made as a child, and I'm a mother now, and I just can't imagine living through that. And so Darian's case, Darian's face, it comes back to me with every story I'm telling. These are the darkest moments of someone's life, and they're opening up to me and trusting me with that, and that's not something I can take lightly. So Darian stays with me, Judy stays with me. I work with Judy all the time. She started a foundation. I help her, do the web design on Squarespace that I'm not very good at, but I'm trying to do whatever I can to help. And so Darian Richardson, I've covered her story on Dark Downeast, but that's one that stays with me.
If you're an audiochuck fan, you'll definitely know this one. Darlene Hulse in Argus, Indiana. So The Deck Investigates was a new series that we launched last year. And we actually took the case on tour, and we did an 11-city tour around the country telling the story. Highly recommend listening to season 1, but it's one that we've had to put a lot of pressure on local authorities who are just kind of sitting on their hands, unfortunately. And the loved ones have gotten very close to us and the team, and that story is so solvable that it haunts me at night of just what could be done. And we have a nonprofit, Ashley founded Season of Justice, which focuses on granting funds for genealogy testing. And that could be utilized in 2 seconds if the powers that be. And so I get very angry. But I believe that we are on the path to hopefully a solve in the very near future.
So we, on the MrBallen podcast anyways, I think without fail, have only covered solved true crime stories or solved mysteries, and that's largely because stylistically the way we cover stories is there's always like a wrap-up at the end where all things that were missing have been filled in, and now the audience understands and knows the story. So I don't have a good unsolved. I will say though, to tie in to the first thing I said about the missing hikers in the 1950s, granted, it has been solved. It has been solved. I don't know if I buy it, but the Russian government, they actually recently re-examined the Dyatlov Pass, and they determined that all the things they saw were explained by a slab of ice had slipped and hit them in their tent. And I guess that apparently made them radioactive and made them flee their tent and run into the forest and die across a mile of space. But So I'd say the Dyatlov Pass one I still consider unsolved, and that would be the one.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. I think that's all the time we have right now.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all so
Thank you all
much.
for coming.